Hello and welcome to Mediocre Rumble Brothers. I am Udon, your host, and with me are Corey, Jordan, and Edwin. You might have noticed we have been gone for a while, but we'll get into the nitty gritty of that at the end of the episode because, that's not what you're here for. But we're here with our segment of Anime Book Club. There's no books. We're going to be talking about Overlord Season 2, continuing where we left off from last time. However, last time we did not have Jordan with us. And he did watch season 1. So before we get started, Jordan, what are your thoughts on Overlord so far as a whole?
I actually like it a lot. It's a really intense animation. Usually they'll have a lot of filler crap that just doesn't really work, but this one actually does really well. I like the story. The character designs are amazing. They do have really good voice acting. The one that plays his Aizen is really, really cool. I do like his position in that animation. So everything going through, it does add up a lot of anticipation to what you're trying to expect, and then getting you to the season 2, it just adds a lot more to it. So it's a really good animation. I really think people should really give it a shot.
And were you watching it? Were you watching it as subbed or dubbed?
I was watching it subbed. No, dubbed. Sorry.
Oh, so you had the English voice actors.
Yes. Yeah.
The English voice cast is really good, and I said this on the first episode, but I've listened to the audiobooks that's actually read by Ains's English voice actor. And I automatically loved it. I was like, that's why I ended up watching the dubbed version this time around, because I'm rewatching all this with everyone here. And I thought, I was like, I love this guy's voice. And yeah, sure enough, the dub is pretty good, I think. But anyway, so yeah, that's Jordan's brief thoughts on it. I'm trimming the fat a little bit from the last time we did one of these. We're going to be focused just on the main arcs. We're not going to be touching on every single little thing to be discussed, like the intricacies. It's going to be a broad overview of what I consider like the 3 main arcs of this season. It's 13 episodes long. We'll talk about the Lizard Man Village first, then we'll talk about Sebas's story second, and then we'll end with the raid on the Riestes Kingdom. So first, we're going to talk about the Lizard Man Village, and I'll just give everyone a brief overview, and then I'll have some questions at the end. And, if you feel like you need to interject and you want to say something, ask questions, feel free to, go right ahead. But so first off, the Lizard Man Village. So in this arc, basically at the beginning of the season, which I'll share my personal thoughts with later. But so at the beginning of the season, we open up with this like Lizard Man Village. We're introduced to a couple new characters, and it's very quickly revealed that this like group of Lizard Man people is being threatened by Nazarick. As of right now, our main character is Sharyu Shasha, which is continuing this like trend that the author of this series just like crams random words together to make names for things because he doesn't want anything to sound like anything else ever. But he is basically he's what's called an outsider to the Lizard Man Village. So he knows like some stuff that not a lot of other people do, and they're threatened by Nazarick to be like in a week or a couple days or something like that. We're gonna come take you over, so get ready. And so he goes on a quest to unite all these Lizard Man tribes together because they're separated into, I think it was about 4 or 5 different tribes, so all their own separate things going on to unite against this enemy, basically. And he goes on this quest. He meets another lizard woman, I guess, called Crush Lulu, who is basically his love interest. She's the leader of another tribe. They join up there. He meets this other big hulking lizard man guy called Zenburu and becomes like friends with him. And through this trio, they basically bring all the tribes together and to unite them against Nazarick. So basically, I described essentially the first 3 episodes. We do cut back a little bit to Nazarick in between all of this happening, because the main point of this arc, from what I gather, is that this whole thing is a test for Ainz, and not even necessarily for Ainz. He's testing his minions specifically because he has tasked Cocytus with this mission to, basically eradicate, take over the Lizard Man tribe. And what Ainz is doing is that he's testing if these these NPCs that now have sentience, if they're capable of like thinking for themselves and adapting within constraints that he places on him, because he doesn't give Cocytus like the full might of Nazarick to take these people down. He basically gives him like paltry minions and says, get the job done, basically. But he's really testing Cocytus to see what he's going to do with like the resources and knowledge at his disposal. So the Lizard Man unite, And the first day of the attack, they actually more or less repel it. The lizardmen aren't doing terribly. We get some cool action scenes, but all that they're fighting is like a bunch of minions that Cocytus is throwing at them, haphazardly. And the entire time, Cocytus doesn't really know what's going on. He doesn't understand why Ainz has given him such like shitty minions to fight against the tribes. And so he's complaining. He talks to Demiurge. Demiurge kind of explains it to him. So he's kind of understanding, but he's having a hard time because out of like all the floor guardians, Cocytus isn't dumb, but he's just martial brained. He doesn't really like, he's not a planner. He's all about action and stuff like that. So his first attack, quote unquote, fails. But in the second attempt, basically Ainz comes out and says, "Hey, you're going to fight my general. Get ready for that." And of course, Cocytus being, completely overpowered compared to everyone else, he fights the lizardmen and easily defeats them. He defeats Sharyu and Zenburu and stuff like that. They both die. And the lizardmen, in the meantime, their plan was basically to throw a bunch of people at this second wave, because after seeing Ainz's power, they're like, "Oh, we are so screwed." So Crush Lulu was going to lead a bunch of the lizardmen away from the village, while Sharyu, Shasha, and Zenburu was going to lead a bunch of people to, buy time and fight them. That doesn't, it works out, quote unquote, kind of, sort of, but, they die much quicker than anticipated. And basically the lizardmen are held captive. And so Ainz brings Crush Lulu before him and basically makes a deal with her, essentially saying that, like, I'm getting ahead of myself. He was just going to kill off all the lizardmen, and Ainz was kind of disappointed with how Cocytus was handling the situation. But then after Cocytus had fought the lizardmen, they didn't do a whole lot to him, but he was very impressed that they were able to come up with a plan to get, attack him, essentially. And he's characterized as a warrior who respects strength and whatnot. So he tries to make a plea to Ainz to be like, "Hey, we don't have to kill the lizardmen. We can recruit them. I see potential in these people." And he's doing a really poor job at it. Ainz is impressed that he's going this far to be like, "Well, I don't want to kill them. I see, we can use these guys," but he's not reaching the end of it. He's like, "Yes, use them, but for what?" Because Ainz's bottom line is always what's good for Nazarick. And Demiurge kind of has to come to his defense, being like, "Oh, well, we can use the lizardmen as a test of governance. Basically, we can choose, you can see what happens when we govern them with the carrot instead of the stick, essentially." And Tyne's like, "Oh, I like your thinking. You know what? Yeah, we'll spare them." And that's when he brings Crush Lulu before him and says, he's like, "Okay, so we're going to spare you, and you're going to be my eyes and ears inside the village to make sure everyone stays in line. No one's going to plan a mutiny against me." And in exchange, he's like, "Well, can you please bring back Sharyu Shasha?" And he's like, "Well, I can do it." And so he brings back the lizardman protagonist we had learned, to like over the course of like, this whole arc happens in like, I think it's like 4 or 5 episodes. It's pretty long. And pretty long in the sense this season only has 13 episodes, and this is like fully like a quarter of it. So yeah, and Ainz kind of got what he wanted. Cocytus, he sees that Cocytus is capable of like thinking outside the box, which is a good and a bad thing, because Cocytus is very loyal, but he's also, he doesn't think outside the box too much. But if that applies to him, how does that apply to Albedo and Demiurge if their loyalties stray elsewhere? So that kind of like, that's the Lizardman arc in a nutshell, right? And I'm skipping over a lot of stuff, but quite frankly, a lot of that arc is not very important. it's kind of contentious, at least in my eyes. It's very slow, but just so if we can hear your guys' opinions on it, just give me your general opinions on the Lizardman arc. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Just general ideas. Jordan, go first.
I mean, me personally, I'm not too much into the whole lizard arc thing. I know that some people do probably appreciate the storyline of how they had all basically separated themselves and became one when it came to the big battle. I usually am more impressed with seeing the action that comes about when they actually went to fight against the big Cocytus. That was a pretty cool battle. I'm usually in for the battle scenes. So like when I started taking a lot of story back, in which I understand you need to fill people in and what exactly is going on with this group of lizards, why are they here, and why is it so important? So they're trying to build you up to get you to that point. I just really wish that the story was a little bit more, I guess, grabbing in a sense, like it really wanted me to really be in there, but I really just let it be done with. So when they saw all the different things coming into play, when they gave out that like doom clock, basically, that was pretty cool. I do like those kind of images that gets placed into people's head, or at least imagination being brought up, which is you're seeing something that is so powerful that it just puts fear into you that you don't know if you're going to make it or not. Like that kind of imagery, for some weird reason, I'm really into. I like when they put that stuff in there. So when they did that part, that was I was really waiting for. And so they actually got me that way. Even though they were eradicating all the lizard people, I guess I would feel sad, but I really don't. That was just something I really didn't have any attachment to. But at the very end of it, when you saw that they were actually able to hold themselves pretty well against that bunch, the group of monsters that all got sent out against them, I thought that was kind of cool. And so when the girl lizard actually asked to have him brought back, I was actually happy that that happened instead of it just being like, why? So it was nice to see that they actually brought that person back and that they're working with them instead of eradicating them completely. Because I don't know if I can remember much about it, but wasn't it said that the undead version was more powerful than the regular version? Is that right? Or am I wrong on that?
My end, you cut out a little bit. So you're asking if like like now that he's been brought back, if he's stronger than he was before?
I mean, is that I thought there was conversations about that they wanted him to be undead because they were more powerful than the regular version. I thought I heard that somewhere, and maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think that ties back to what Ainz wanted them for, because I think that might be true. Like if he brought them back as like undead soldiers, they probably would be stronger. So he was thinking, that's better for Nazarick having more soldiers. But then, Cocytus and Demiurge had to convince him to, not murder them all and say, let's use them for governance instead. So I think they would, if I had to guess, even if that wasn't brought up directly, they would be stronger. But again, you have to convince Ainz to do something, you need to speak his language of just like, what can we gain from this? How does this benefit Nazarick as a whole?
Yeah, and I mean, so I guess long story short, it's just basically saying that I didn't have any attachment in the beginning, but at the very end, I kind of did because again, they proved themselves, and it was actually cool. I thought there were going to be a bunch of soldiers that were just going to get eradicated, just nonsensical, just get them out of here. We're done, moving on. I thought that was going to be just a waste of time, and it looked like they put it towards to actually show that they were actually worth your time. So when they brought him back, I was excited, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Now let's see what they're going to actually be used for later in the series.
Alrighty, I like all those thoughts. Edwin, what about you? What do you think about this arc?
I mean, it's like the whole Lizard Man arc. I was a little lost because it went on for so long. I had to try and remind myself. I was like, am I watching Overlord? I was just watching like a lizard people show. But it's like I like the world building, but it's just like it took a while for like the actual show to like say it was like what the purpose of showing these lizard people was for and like their livelihood and all that. So it was like okay, by the end of it, it was like yeah, I understood like the whole point of it. But it's like it's like as annoyed as I was that it went on for so long, I was happy that it came to a better conclusion than just all of them dying. It was like at least like all that time watching them try and survive was not gone to waste. But it was I did find it a little weird that it's just like, no, just bring back my husband, not the other four leaders that died for nothing. It was like it was all a test by the end of it, but it was like, hey, I mean, I guess I guess they won still. They didn't get eradicated like I expected.
Yeah, it's true, and I'll reveal a little bit what happens with them because I'm caught up with the light novels and what exactly it means for them to survive when we get Corey's perspective, and I'll give mine too at the end of it. So, Corey, what do you think about this arc?
The lizard people arc is like almost half of the entire season, and it's kind of weird because like it's been mentioned where you feel like you're watching a different show. Though I think the designs of the lizard people are really cool. I kind of was on board with like whatever this whole story arc was going to get explained, but then they kind of just jump completely out of it to the next thing that has nothing to do with the lizard people. Not to say that I'm going to talk about that. That'll be later, of course. But like the lizard tribes people, that like the world building stuff is cool. The art style obviously is really dope. The fight was neat. They were getting their asses kicked. I don't really like his legendary weapon that much. I think it looks kind of weird for it being some sort. It just kind of looks like a broken piece of mirror. Though it is like, yeah, the concept of it is pretty sweet. But yeah, it's as watching them like travel around and get the tribes together and stuff. And it's like, okay, I thought the whole season was going to be about this like lizard tribe and Ainz and like them all coming together type of thing. But then like right when it gets to like I guess the climax of these lizard people and they're proving themselves, it just kind of ends and moves on to something else. And it's just kind of, well, what happened to them? Like, what are we doing? Are we going to see them again? Because it's kind of cool, I guess. But I thought they would be introducing us to like a new main character that's going to kind of appear alongside the cast that we've been introduced to in Nazarick, but it doesn't really seem like that's going to ever happen.
Yeah, so like from my perspective, especially as one who is caught up with the series largely, it's kind of a pointless arc. It could have been cut down like 3 episodes. It could have only had been 2. I mean, when you take what I like my summary and compare it to what actually happens, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the Lizardman episodes for what Sharyu goes through and how he talks to people. You learn Lizardman history, but like it's all pointless. It never gets brought up again. It's probably the most pointless couple episodes in the entire show. The value we gain from it is learning that the NPCs of Nazarick are capable of thinking outside the box. Like that was the point of it, but I just feel like the point could have gotten across in an episode or 2 less because it's a little bit boring. And I can tell you right now, probably the only significant thing that happens with the Lizardmen as of right now, and the series is close to being done whenever, the author gets around to finishing it, is they ask when Ainz goes looking for the dwarves, they get Zenboru, the big one with the giant arm, to guide him to the dwarves because he's visited them before. And that could have been like literally any character. It just didn't have to be the Lizardman. It just is because I think the author realized he's not doing anything with them. We see them a little bit in the next season because he gets them to train Hemunsuke. But again, it's like anyone could have trained Hemunsuke. It didn't have to be the Lizardmen. They're just there because they just happen to be there. So it has its importance. But like overall, it's kind of a waste of it's a drag, especially to open up your season with this. It's kind of a drag. Does anyone else feel that way? Because it just you got to know all these Nazarick characters that you want to spend more time with the Nazarick characters. And granted, Overlord is a series where we do put the spotlight on all the other characters because we have to see how they're reacting to what Ainz is doing, because let's not mince words, Ainz is the antagonistic force of this entire world, so we need to see how these people are reacting to him. We can't just stay fully focused on Nazarick the entire time, right? So I mean, that's pretty much it. We learned that Cocytus is able to think for himself. That's the most important part of the entire arc. Does anyone have anything else?
It was kill those people. It was like, I don't want to. Good job. End of arc.
Exactly. You just summed up pretty much the entire arc. In it's important. It's something to learn about the characters, but like it could have been done much faster because, as you'll see, my summary for the rest of this is much, much longer because so much more of substance happens later in the season. So any last words on the Lizardmen from anyone? No? All right.
No.
We'll move on for them. No more stinky Lizardmen.
They did go through some business together.
They did. And I mean, I agree with you guys. Like the action scenes were fun. It is fun seeing, these guys fight an enemy that we know full well they'll never defeat.
No. What we're talking about. They did the business.
Yeah, they did. They did the hanky panky. And Ainz accidentally shows everyone the Discovery Channel accidentally when he wants to spy on the Lizardmen. Yeah, and that's another thing about Anime Book Club. I'm trying not to spoil everything. There were some good jokes. There's lots of other narrative things that happens. We're just hitting the very, very biggest parts of everything, right? So, anyways, we're moving into the second arc, which I just call the Sebas arc because this is, it's all about him, essentially. Everything that happens the rest of the season is predicated on what happens here. So, the second arc, again, what I call the Sebas arc. So, we have seen Sebas and Solution a little bit. Sebas being the butler and Solution being one of the maids that works in Nazarick. They are currently undercover in the Riestes Kingdom. Solution like pretending to be like a noble woman, and Sebas, still posing, undercover as exactly what he is as a butler for her. And they're just gathering pretty much general information about the kingdom and how the world works and stuff like that. So Sebas is out in the city one day running errands, and he seems to just wander the city. So he decides like, I'm going to go down this, creepy back alley on the way home because, he has nothing to be afraid of. He just wants to map out the city and see everything. And he comes across this slave girl, basically slave prostitute girl that got thrown out of this, illegal brothel in this city. And she is in real bad shape. This is when we kind of learn, up to this point, pretty much everyone in Nazarick is shown to vehemently hate humanity in some way, shape, or form. Sebas doesn't hate humanity. In fact, he seems to like them. And so he asks the woman if she wants him to help her. And she just barely responds yes. So he basically tells the guy who's trying to tell him to go away to, go away. I'm either going to kill you or he's like, well, the people are going to hire me, going to kill me. He's like, well, I can kill you right now, or you can run away and maybe live. So end of story. He takes this girl whose name is Suare back to the mansion, and immediately we're shown that Solution is one of the creatures at Nazarick, because she's like a slime monster that, yeah, she hates humanity. She just views them as food. She wonders why Sebas is even doing this, and Sebas does outrank her. He's like the head of not the maid specifically, but like housekeeping and basically that rank of creatures at Nazarick, and says, well, I saved her, and Solution does have like healing powers to a degree, and says, fix her up, because she has like, she's missing bodily fluid, she has STDs, she has a couple different diseases, like she's messed up all the, to hell and back essentially. And so they get her fixed up, and then Sebas is still taking care of her. We, again, kind of also showing us, like, wow, Nazarick has crazy healing powers to get rid of all that and basically overnight. And but we, she's healthy. Suari's healthy, but she has intense mental scarring from what she's been through at that brothel, and it kind of leads to probably one of my most favorite scenes in the entire show so far is her embracing Sebas. Just can't believe that someone actually helped her. Like, very touching scene that I like a lot. So then basically Sebas takes Suare and employs her more or less. Yes, his justification to Solution is like, oh, well, we'll employ her as another maid here because, I'm being the only butler is kind of weird. So let's have another person as a maid, more help, working for your fake persona as a noble looks better, right? And Solution's still iffy about it, but is just kind of going along with it for now. So that happens for a little bit, until obviously the organization that owned Suare previously, which we learn is the Eight Fingers, and the Eight Fingers, is like an organized crime division that works under, in the underbelly of the Riestes kingdom. They do slave trade, they do drugs, they do all the bad stuff. And they're basically telling him, he's like, hey, we know you took that girl, give her back to us. And Sebas is like, well, no, I'm not going to do that. And well, nothing happens right that second. They leave, and Sebas leaves very shortly after him, or after them, because it's just two guys that come there. And so he manages to get them to leave. He's like, well, we're going to be back. You can't just mess with us and get away with it. And Sebas leaves after that. And Solution is finding this really bad because of what Sebas did, he's like bringing unwanted attention to them to potentially blow their cover. So she finally decides to just tell Ainz about what's happening. But meanwhile, we get some time with Climb. I really hate his name. But he is Princess Renair's bodyguard. And we saw him very, very briefly in season 1, but this is where we kind of really start getting to know him. He trains with Gazif, and basically we're just seeing through his eyes Renair meeting with the Blue Roses, who, again, we've heard them name dropped before, but they're basically a really, really high-ranking adventuring party within the area. They're basically the most popular, most famous adventuring party in the area. And Renair is personal friends with their leader, and basically they're planning to take down the Eight Fingers as well. And so between him meeting them, Climb is out and about in the city and actually comes across Sebas, and Sebas again saves someone else who's being beaten up by a bunch of thugs, pretty effortlessly, because like all of Nazarick's people, he's incredibly overpowered. Climb sees this and chases Sebas down and is like, hey, you're super strong. Can you please train me? And so Sebas gives him a few tips. And during all this, Brain Unglaus, who we met in season 1, if you remember, he is the samurai that Shaltir humiliated back at the bandit camp. And he ran, basically running his tail between his legs after she effortlessly deflected everything he tried to throw at her. And so he's here. And he also saw everything and is also kind of following Sebas around for the same reason. He's like, hey, I want to be stronger. And Sebas is like, yeah, I can, he gives Climb a few tips about facing fear, certain death and stuff like that. And then we learned Sebas was actually on his way to the brothel that he had found Suare at. And he's like, yeah, I'm basically going to go in there and kick everyone's butt. And he's like, how about you two help me? He's like, oh, yeah, we'll help you. He's like, I work for Princess Renair. If you know that the Eight Fingers is operating here, well, I have a duty to stop it. So him and Brain help Sebas, quote unquote, help Sebas. He doesn't really need their help, but Sebas is kind enough to let them think they're helping, basically. And for this entire time, we're basically focused on those two as Climb and Brain confront one of the lead. Well, I don't think he was a leader, but he was like a high-ranking like bruiser. Essentially, he was like a equivalent of a high-ranking adventurer that works for the Eight Fingers as they fought off. Climb faced him, used the lessons that Sebas taught him, and then Brain had to put the finishing touches on the guy. But yeah, Sebas goes in, kills one of the guys who had originally went to the mansion, was telling him, hey, we want the girl back, and just kind of kills him in a very satisfying way because the guy's a real piece of crap. So that happens, and obviously Sebas kind of thinks that's it, but it kind of gets flipped on his head because after he returns to the mansion after this little mission he gave himself, Ainz is waiting there with a gathering of like all the floor guardians because, Solution told him like, hey, Sebas is doing some stuff that you didn't tell him to do, like of his own free will, and it's getting weird and starting to cause trouble for us. And Ainz is kind of like, he doesn't really believe Sebas would do that, but obviously he also believes Solution when she says that he's been doing all this. So he's skeptical basically, but he needs to get to the bottom of everything. And so he questions Sebas, it's just like, well, I see you got a pet, you have this new human. And he's like, is she worth anything? And he's like, she makes really good soup. And the entire time Demiurge, because I guess Demiurge's creator and Sebas's creator were always butting heads back in Ainz's guild time, so they don't get along. Basically, Demiurge is continuously trying to undermine everything Sebas says and trying to get him in trouble, basically, and just kill the girl because she's a leak. She's a weak point because she's just a human. And eventually, Ainz says Sebas like, well, kill her. Throw a punch, kill her, do it. And Sebas. And, again, touching scene, Suare just accepts this and just closes her eyes with a smile on her face because she's like, well, if someone's going to kill me, I'm glad it's you. And you at least gave me a couple of days of happiness and, you saved me. So I'd rather be killed by my savior than, die in that hole you pulled me out of. Again, very touching. I really like everything that happens in this arc. And he throws a punch and Cocytus stops it. And Ainz is like, well, Cocytus was, use your judgment. Was that a killing blow? And Cocytus was like, oh, yeah, that was a killing blow. If I didn't stop that, she would have died. And Ainz is like, all right, well, that's all I needed. You're good. Your loyalty is proven. And so he says, all right, well, Suare will bring you back to Nazari because he's like, do you have any attachment to the human world? And she's like, no, kind of hate it. And she's like, all right, well, good. You can come work at Nazari then. You'll be part of the maid, you're part of the maid staff. And he's like, all right, well, we're going to pull out of here. Sebas, I need you to do a couple errands before we leave. And so he sends Sebas and Solution out to do a last few minute things. And then they were just going to pull out of the mission and return to Nazarick. And you see Demiurge ask Ainz, like, why are you going this far for this random human? We could have just gotten rid of her. And Ainz is like, well, and we learn that because during the interrogation, he asks Suare's last name and she finally gives it to him. And it turns out that she is the sister of one of the adventurers from the party in season 1 that got killed by Clementine. And because Ainz took a journal of the girl who was posing as a boy. I think she was the mage of the party. And he took the journal and said, yeah, I took this journal from this girl. And because of it, I learned a lot about this world and basically made me feel indebted to her. So to return this debt of her giving me this gift of knowledge, I'm going to return it to her sister, basically, and keep her safe on my name, And again, really touching. I like that sentiment. I like that thought process. It's neat. Again, it shows that Ainz, he's not going to do that for just any human. He probably would have killed her if it was literally anyone else, essentially. I will kind of stop there. This arc goes a little bit further, but the last bit of this arc kind of merges into the final arc of the season. So, Jordan, how did you like everything that happened with Sebas and what I just summarized?
It was really good. We all had that little bit of a break with the lizard people, so this was definitely a good change that I really appreciated. So, seeing the good and bad of how this animation is able to show things, like you obviously see things that are just constantly just battling and fighting, but now you're actually seeing like the real dark side of story where it almost seems like real life, where you have the brothels and all these things that are just, it's terrible to see. And so when you actually see Sebas actually fight for these people and actually help, like saving this person that had such a really bad experience and trying to bring her back, was like, it was one of the best things I've ever seen. It was really cool to actually get all of that taken care of. And like you said, it was really, I was basically in the back of holding onto my seat, just like don't. And he's just like, all right, kill her, punch her. And I was like, oh my God, he's gonna do it. And then luckily Kitus stopped it. I was like, oh my God. Like I really thought that was gonna happen. So the fact that they put that in there was really good. It really definitely like put me into perspective of what exactly is required to be loyal. And the fact that he actually went through with it, I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful stuff. But the fact that he went in and took care of all the bad people, I was really in for it. That was a really good part of that season that really stuck with me, was the fact that he was doing good. He was doing his part to following orders and such, but he went extra mile to save somebody and bring them back and actually change their life. And the fact that they were so willing to die for him, for what was needed to be done because of what he was able to accomplish for her, was very powerful. So definitely a good part of the season for sure.
Yeah, it's one of my, I think it's the best part of the season. I mean, we have some good stuff in the last arc, but like this whole arc, there's a couple moments in Overlord that always stick with me, but this whole arc involving Sebas to me is like one of the biggest ones that I really like. I think like, Overlord's writing quality goes up and down, but yeah, what you just said, kind of showing this darker side of society and showing how it's a minority of Nazarick, but there are people in Nazarick that will just care for random humans. They don't hate humans, and Sebas is a caring, individual. Yeah, it's very powerful. I liked it a lot. I do think it's probably some of the best writing the author had done for the series in totality, actually, at least when it comes to like emotional impact, right? Obviously, there wasn't a whole lot of action in this part other than Sebas doing some stuff in the brothel when he's beating the place down, right? Edwin, what are your thoughts?
I really like this arc. I just like Sebas as a character in general, but I really hate Solution because since the first season, I was like, I knew I'm gonna hate this lady so much, and then the fact that it's like she's just a snitch to one of my favorite characters, Sebas, was like, man, I really hate. But Sebas, like being the kind-hearted one out of almost the entirety of Nazarick, is just, it just gives like a new perspective for like the villain side. So it's just like, and I was like, not they're not all evil, but it's like this. It's like the counterpart of like the human side, where it's just like, oh, they're not all good, obviously. But I really like the whole arc, like the fact that he just goes around and then just does random stuff, and then like he doesn't even have to be trained like Hokkaido's does to think outside of the box. He just does his own thing. So he's like already a step above some of the floor guardians in that aspect. But I also like the fact that he is like, he gets connected to the other characters. So now like all the branching paths all these characters have are like consolidating and moving forward, and like unknowingly working directly with Nazarick, and then the story just moves forward with all of them together. But going the what you said about your favorite part being Sebas and the girl, like their moments together, I also love that as well. And the fact that he just almost kills her, like also terrified me. I was like, please don't kill her. But they were so sweet together. And also the fact is like that he went into the brothel and started taking care of everyone, and it just blowing a hole through the guy that caused all those problems. I was like, that was awesome. I wish he could have done that sooner, but still, at least it was done. But it's like, yeah, it's like I don't care as much for Climb. I don't know, he's like the weaker character. Is just like maybe he'll get good at some point, but I don't know. I'd prefer Brain a little bit more. He's just a lot more confident.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the human characters before we move on to the final arc. But yeah, what you're saying earlier about not liking Solution, I like Solution. I have a weakness for slime girls, so I already like her, even if she is evil.
Is that what she is?
She's I don't know if it's slime per se. She could be acid for all I know, but she is essentially a slime for all intents and purposes. Because if you remember, I think we had a brief moment in the end of the first season where they were attacked by a bunch of bandits, and she basically semi-seduced one of them. And when he went to go grab her chest, it just sunk into her, and she just basically wrapped her body around him and dissolved him. But she's
Oh, okay. I mean, I forgot that for a second, but I just considered it just like an absorbing spell or something, not the fact that she was a slime girl.
Yeah, she's a fully slime. In the same way that I don't think a lot of people understand this, but Sebas is a dragon man, essentially. He's not just a guy.
I forgot that too.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know until you actually told me, so it's like I would have known otherwise.
Yeah, I saw his eyes turn red. That was it.
Yeah, he has these are details that are better explained in the light novels, but yeah, he's a dragon man, essentially. That's why he's, tough as nails. But you have to understand that, Solution, she doesn't, well, no, she does hate humans, but she probably wouldn't have snitched on Sebas if the whole bit with Shaltir didn't happen in season 1, because I'll take this moment to compare it to Warhammer 40,000. So after the Horus Heresy, literally the slightest whiff of heresy happening in the Imperium, and you're just going to get shot dead because of all the bad things happened as a result of that. So basically, anytime someone seems to be acting out of character, they're going to be on their guard a lot more because, like, well, did they just get brainwashed like Shaltir did? Like, we have no idea what some people are capable of in this world, so they have to be on the lookout for that sort of thing. I don't think she probably would have gone as far as she did if not for that, because now she's like, well, is he being controlled by someone? Is the human controlling him? Like, what's happening? I need to tell Hines about this. Not saying that she's somehow redeeming or anything, but that's the reasoning for being so paranoid about this sort of situation. But anyways, Corey, what are your thoughts on this?
This part of the arc I guess this arc in this second season is a lot better than the first, just because you're kind of back to familiar characters. And I wouldn't say that that's fair to the first part, because it's like naturally you're going to want to introduce new characters and kind of explain this, but this arc was just more interesting, and because it kind of gets into more serious like tone of storytelling rather than just straight up fantasy fight, it did make me kind of like, man, it'd be pretty dope if there was a fighting game of this. Maybe there is or something, but it's because he just like Sebas just seems like such a cool like fighting game character. Like it feels like he'd fit right in with like Guilty Gear or something like that. But yeah, I thought the writing in particular for this part of the season was really good. The action sequences still, though they weren't as like prevalent, I guess, because they're saving it for the last portion of this, but they were still fun to watch. And because the tone of this was so like serious, it kind of fits what I look for in anime in general. I kind of navigate towards like more like M-rated like themes, more like serious dark anime. And I kind of said this when we talked about the first season, but I was a little concerned before that it was going to become this like campy isekai thing, but because it pulls my interest with characters actually dying and the things that they talk about and it being less, I guess, like obnoxious. Occasionally you'll get like some insert anime moment here, but yeah, but it doesn't really get too like out there for me. So I kind of like, I can stay locked in, especially since the season is not 30 episodes long and things like that. They have a limited amount of time to be concise with their storytelling, so they don't really waste it. That being said, it's like, did they need to do the lizard thing for 5 episodes? They probably could have condensed that a little bit, but I don't know if this part of the story needed to be any longer though either, because then we might have been discussing it in the same way the lizard people. It's like, how long does Sebas have to be walking around this town and fighting this brothel? It's kind of like compartmentalized into almost like a OVA section of this. Really, it's like Sebas is like the main character of a short film, and we get to just sit through and watch it happen. And the character development here is really good because the pacing is really solid. And yeah, it was pretty dope.
Yeah, the pacing, just sum it all up, it's really dope. Yeah, the pacing is really solid. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's as long as it needs to be. It's why I say it's probably some of the best writing. The author, Fugane Maruyama, I actually think is his name. Pardon me, I'm probably butchering that. I don't have the name right in front of me. I'm just remembering that from the audiobook. But anyways, yeah, it's probably some of the best emotional writing he's done. I think we already answered a couple of questions that like we all really like Suare's reaction and everything. We all like seeing Sebas. We all like Sebas. Sebas is a lot of people's like favorite character.
I probably like Sebas a lot because he reminds me of their names are the same, but it's Sebastian from Black Butler.
That is not a show for guys. And I learned that the not necessarily hard way, but I'm just like, I don't think I'm the target audience for this when I was watching Black Butler. Anyways, one quick question before we keep moving on. I guess you can call it quick. Now, with the Lizardmen, kind of circling back what something Corey just said, is that the Lizardmen weren't bad. It's almost like we spend so much time with the characters. I think Jordan said this too, but it's like it was interesting. We spend so much time with them. We were kind of getting into it, but then we have this sinking feeling. It's like, are these guys going to ever be brought up again? It's like, do we spend all that time for nothing? So we spend more time.
Well, I mean, it's like the problem is like you could like it literally could have been anyone, but it's just like they're not as relevant as the first village that they took over after helping them. It was like after the lizard people arc, it's like they just forgotten, unlike the first village that Nazarick took over, that keep coming back periodically. So it's just like unless it's like the same or more, it was kind of pointless.
Yeah, Karn keeps getting brought back up, and we'll talk about that more probably in season 3 when we do the episode on that. But yeah, what you're saying is not wrong. But my point being is that the human characters, so more side characters happen in this arc. When we're not dealing with Sebas, we're dealing with Brain and Climb. They're a bit more important because we've already seen Brain a little bit, and Climb is close to the royalty, and we get to see a little bit of Princess Renair. But then one of the episodes, almost in its totality, is dedicated to when Climb and Brain are helping Sebas invade the brothel, but the majority of the episode is just watching Climb fight one of the Eight Fingers guys. Now, do you guys like kind of zone out during these parts, or are you invested in these side characters enough to be like, you actually liked watching that fight? You like seeing Climb's character growth, what's happening with him. Like, how much do you guys value, like these side characters when the camera is focused on them as opposed to anything having to do with Nazarick? Like, do you feel yourself zoning out? Do you feel like we could skip this? Because I mean, hell, even in the summary, I kind of like glazed over it, but it's basically an entire episode of him fighting this guy in the basement of this brothel, right? So anyone have any thoughts on that?
I mean, basically at this point, it's just like if you're not part of Nazarick, then you're gonna die. So it's just like I was like, I still hope that they live and that they live as long as they can and that they actually improve as a character. It was like, yeah, I'll feel for them, but it's just like I'm not gonna pour I'm not gonna connect hearts with these characters because like you're not part of Nazarick, so I totally expect you to die at some point.
I think they're necessary to the story because you need some sort of power scaling, so that when you have everybody from Nazarick being like ultimately just badass no matter what they're coming across, it's nice to see characters that are kind of more, I guess, relative to the world that Ainz is kind of ruling over and seeing how they're interacting with these threats so that you kind of get a nice understanding of how strong that Nazarick actually is when it comes to any of these things. So that being said, interested in them. Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's nice to see them mess with stuff and then it's just kind of like, all right, now watch this happen, because naturally, if they go through and just kill everybody super fast because they're all super strong, you kind of don't really have any tension. So you kind of want to root for this underdog character because they're trying to save somebody from this major threat and they're not going to do so well or whatever. So even if they're not really going to carry him over, I think it kind of helps with the story anyways, because primarily they're driving even anything that's going on in the background with people plotting and stuff like that, because they're kind of involved with this. And then they're used as nice little, I guess, pawns in the grand scheme of things to kind of move story elements along until the big pieces come out to play.
I do agree with the whole power scaling thing. I just, as you saw when I was doing my summary, even when I was trying to go into detail, I'd never brought those two up. I just, Climb and the other individual, can't remember his name, Brain. I just didn't see anything, and I didn't like the design of the characters. It was something that I was rooting for, because obviously it's always trying to root for the good guys, but I was more be under the understanding that it's like, okay, you got to go in there. We got to see exactly what a normal person looks like to somebody that's extremely powerful, and we got to see that. But I don't really see the point to having to have them continue on with the rest, because it's just, I don't feel like they're ever going to get to that level to where they're actually going to be strong enough to compete against these individuals that are like godlike. So it's like, yeah, I get to see the differences in speed, power, and all that stuff. But I was more involved with the individuals like Sebas, seeing what he could actually do. That was my more anticipated feeling, was I was wanting to see what he could do, not really what these two could do. It's like, okay, I saw what they got. Good. Moving along. I'm more invested in these other characters because one, their character design is really cool, but their how they actually do about their business is a lot more intense. These people are like, yeah, I'm by the sword and I'm doing my best. Teach me the ways. It's something like I would say is like a backside to where it's like if you want to get invested, you can, but I just don't feel like it needs to really be a part of the main story. I think it's just something to be done off the side, and then you move along with the other characters that I enjoy more.
Yeah, it's your consensuses are kind of what I expected, more or less. They are. It is good to have these different perspectives on these characters, but it's like, how invested do you want to become in it? It's fun because you do need to see these people fight against these insurmountable odds whenever Nazarick is, right? I was just curious. So, anyways, we will move on to the third arc, which is, I might not call them arcs necessarily in the future because I realized naming that it's like talking about an entire season when you're referring to like Demon Slayer or something. But anyways, is the basically raid on the Riestes kingdom, the invasion of Riestes, right? Before we start on that, during this whole thing with Sebas, we get a scene, meanwhile, with Princess Renaer. And at this point, the only thing we have about Princess Renaer is that she's just the good princess. She's intelligent and she wants to do right by the people. And she's been working with the Blue Roses to get rid of the Eight Fingers because they're the big bad of the city, right? So we are shown a meeting between her brother Prince Zanak, and Marquis Raven, who is basically a high-ranking noble, because how Riestes politics work, they have like the noble family or the royal family, and then a bunch of high-ranking nobles that like are split between power of the entire kingdom, right? So Marquis Raven's one of these high-ranking nobles, but he's a friend of the royal family. So they're having a private meeting. And during this, it's basically spelled out that Renaer and Zanak are conspiring to get rid of their father, or not maybe not necessarily get rid of him, but basically position Zanak so that he will be the next king on the throne, because they both have an older brother who they both know is more favored to be the king. And they're basically recruiting not only Marquis Raven's help in this endeavor, but Renaer is also petitioning Marquis Raven's military forces to help with the mission she wants to do to take on the Eight Fingers, right? So the biggest part about this is obviously we have this conspiracy, quote unquote, underneath the scenes with the prince and the princess. But this is also where we get to see the fact that we get alluded to this because Prince Zanak calls her a monster to climb at some point, but basically Princess Renaer is off her rocker. She's kind of insane. She has this smile, and everything we've seen up to this point has all been fake. She's just putting on a mask. She's kind of like apathetic to everything except this unhealthy obsession with Climb, and she basically wants to treat him as essentially a pet, but she wants to see him hurt. She wants to lock him up. She wants to care for him, but in the most unhealthy way imaginable. And these two both know that. Unfortunately, she is also incredibly intelligent, and they're relying on her plans to get what they want out of this deal, so they're going along with it. So that's interesting. We don't have the typical just like Princess Peach aesthetic with this princess, right? So anyways, back to Sebas. So Sebas he's coming back. Well, Sebas and Solution are coming back from these last minute errands Ein sent them on. But they come back and realize the mansion's been ransacked and Suare has been kidnapped because the Eight Fingers were not happy about everything Sebas has been doing. But this time, it's not just Sebas. They report this to Ainz, and Ainz is like, well, I said I was going to protect Suare. I staked my name on it. So they gotta go. We're going to go kick their butts. And so he phones Albedo and says, hey, we got to get a large scale operation going. We're going to take down these guys. Albedo's kind of hesitant, and Ainz has to put her in her place for, lack of a better phrasing for that, because, he's like, I put my name on this. We're saving the human. I know you don't like humans, but I said on my word, we're going to protect her, and she's been kidnapped. So this is what we're doing. We kind of get a little hint on Albedo's kind of like dissatisfied with the way Ainz runs the place, but just one line of her looking at the flag a flag of Ain's old gown or going on the floor and being like, I don't understand, this is ridiculous. So very quickly, Nazarick, mobilizes the troops, and he assigns Demiurge to command the forces of this operation, right? So basically, this is the entire last part of the season. This last 3 episodes, I think. Anyways, so Demiurge has constructed a plan to quote unquote rescue Suare, but they are actually accomplishing a lot all at once, right? So Number one of his plan, Sebas is going to go rescue Suare and inflict damage on the Eight Fingers by basically taking out all their high-ranking quote-unquote adventurers, right? Their biggest hitters, their soldiers, right? Number two, a bunch of different members of Nazariq are going to infiltrate and kidnap all the members of the Eight Fingers inner circle. And when they say Eight Fingers, there's 8 leaders for every branch of their like organization. They're going to infiltrate all the different bases they operate all at once and kidnap all the leaders, right? Number three, Demiurge is going to assume this fake identity of Yaldabaoth. And basically, if they come, I'm piecing this together because while the show spells it out, it's kind of hard to see the logic for this. Basically, to understand why this plan is going the way it is, at the same time Nazariq is doing this, Princess Renaer, the Blue Roses, and the soldiers that she recruited from Marquis Raven are also going to be launching raids at the same time on the Eight Fingers hideouts at the same time Nazariq is. The Princess Renaer, Nazariq knows that they are going to do this. I'm not going to tell you how they know this, but they do know this. That's vital to know why the plan is going the way it is. They know this is going to be simultaneous. So they know someone is going to come across one of the operatives from Nazariq kidnapping the people from the Eight Fingers stronghold. So when that happens, they're going to be, their quote unquote disguise is that they're going to be working for Yaldabaoth, not Nazariq, this big bad demon man. It's just Demiurge in a mask. So basically, the cover story is that Yaldabaoth is assaulting the Eight Fingers outposts looking for an item, and he can't find it there. And because he can't find it there, he's going to now attack Riesti's kingdom looking for an item that he thought they had, and now he thinks that it's like in a storehouse or something, so now he's going to attack the city to look for it, right? During this time, Momon, who is Ainz's adventurer alter ego, is going to fight and defeat Yaldabaoth in order to increase his fame, right? Because obviously no one can beat Demiurge, and Ainz can, and even he's going to have a mock fight with them, and so he's going to be the one to beat him and make Momon even more famous. And then just a side note is that during this entire time, Nazariq minions are like looting the city for supplies and other things that they can take back to Nazariq, people, food, all this other stuff, right? So that is the plan that Demiurge has made to accomplish a whole bunch of different things all at once while also technically rescuing Suare, right? So what happens is Sebas ends up meeting Brain and Climb, who were part of the Princess Renaer's like forces that are going to raid the Eight Fingers place. So they meet up. Obviously, they already know each other, and they're like, "Sebas, what are you doing here?" He's like, "Oh, man, I'm about to kick some butt. You want to join me?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, you're like crazy strong. Of course, we want to help you." And so they infiltrate this place. Sebas really, in another scene of overpoweredness, but it's really cool. He takes out all these characters that are all boasting how powerful they are, and he just blows them all away in a couple seconds. So they infiltrate the place. They find Suare. They rescue her. That part of the plan is thumbs up, a-okay. Second part of the plan, everything's going well. We get a couple shots of some of the Nazariq minions kidnapping some of the people until we get to Entoma, who is one of the maids. She is an insect maid. But she runs across the Blue Roses, and at first she is holding her own against the big bruiser of the Blue Roses and one of their ninjas. I'm sorry, I forget their names, but kind of like the lizard people, I'm forgetting them on purpose because they're really not that important. They're fighting her, and it's kind of even, but Entoma starts getting the upper hand until Evil Eye, their maid, shows up. And Evil Eye is kind of a step above the rest of them. She has like really powerful magic, and she has really specifically anti-insect magic, which actually really, really hurts Entoma to the point where they beat her. Like they beat a member of Nazariq in a fair fight. Granted, she's one of the maids, so she's like lower on the totem pole in terms of strength, but she's also not a minion either. So she's much stronger than like a random skeleton or zombies Ainz can summon. To the point where Demiurge kind of has to bail her out. And Demiurge fights them, but then Momon shows up as planned and drives off Yaldabaoth, who they have a mock fight. Evil Eye sees all of this, and he quote unquote drives off Yaldabaoth. And then he says, "Well, I'm going to attack the city. You better be ready for me." And so Momon works together with Princess Renaer and all the other, the Blue Roses adventurers, because they're like, oh dang, this demon's going to come and mess up the city, right? So they form like a group to fight him. Yaldabaoth attacks the city. Prince Zanuck is using this as like he's like out there leading the assault, so he's getting some fame for the people, improving his image and stuff. The Blue Roses are taking out a lot of the bigger demons. So Momon Nabe, if you remember, she's also one of the maids at Nazarick, is Momon's incognito sidekick. And Evil Eye go to fight Albedo, who is also using the rest of the maids from Nazarick. And my brain is desperately trying to remember what their group is called, because they do have it, and I will remember it before the end of this episode.
The Battle Maidens or something?
No, they have a name, and it's on the tip of my tongue, but I'll return to it. I'll look it up when someone else is talking, because it's bothering me now. But anyway, so this is a mock battle for everyone except for Evil Eye. So Nabe says she's going to fight 3 of the maids. Momon obviously is fighting Albedo, and then Evil Eye takes on 2 of the maids. They are actually fighting. Well, Nabe and 3 of the maids just kind of go behind a wall and just sit there and wait, because obviously they're all part of the same, conspiracy. But, thankfully Evil Eye doesn't die, but she's definitely fighting for her life out there. And then Momon and Albedo kind of go out of sight, where they kind of sit down. And this is the part where, they explain how this entire plan is working. What I just told you earlier, how this plan is working. This is that entire scene. So then Momon, quote unquote, beats Albedo. He retreats. They all leave. And then, Momon is, he's lauded as the savior of Riestes. He drove off the big bad. Yay, thumbs up. Everyone loves him. The royal family is in good standing with people. Momon is on top. The only other thing that happens of note is that Brain and Climb's, their role in this is that they're going to go rescue some people that are being held captive in a warehouse. And on the way there, Brain recognizes Shaltier, even though she's really dressed up to kind of hide her identity, just in case someone did recognize her. But Brain did, because of all the trauma he's been through involving her. She doesn't really remember him. She starts to, but he's kind of insignificant to her. But he tries to fight her, and all he manages to do is cut the very tip of her pinky fingernail, which before is all she needed to block his katana. And he is insanely proud of it. He is over the moon, because he basically scratched God in his eyes, essentially. And he starts to run away. And obviously, if Shaltier wanted to kill him, she could. She has no issue with this. But Brain, and they also have another random NPC essentially with them, some random character that we'll never see again. She starts to chase them, but after seeing that group, she stops and she's like, oh, well, I can't do it now. And she just kind of lets them go, which is weird. We don't know why. And then they go and they rescue the people. They accomplish their mission. And then, as I just said, everything resolves kind of exactly how Demiurge kind of predicted it was going to. And at the very end of everything, we kind of see a teaser for the next season where another country is taking notice of Ainzel Gon, because, his name was related to Karn and the magic he did there. And now they're like, oh, well, we got to look into this. And this is the Empire, the opposite of the Riestes Kingdom. This is the other great country in this area. So we're going to be dealing with them in season 3, right? So that's the finale of the season, the entire season, the arc and the season, right? So Jordan, what are your thoughts on it?
So I was not too into the whole backstory and how they were going to try to overthrow and everything like that. I do know that was interesting when I saw that basically the crazy side of the princess, where she, like you just said, she was almost coming off as this nice princess, and then you find out that she actually had this whole strategy of what she was going to do for her kingdom and such to get herself up in the reign. So I was just like, holy crap, that's definitely was unexpected. So that was awesome. Other the additional things to that, I really wasn't seeing anything that was of any importance to me until we got to the actual point where I actually saw 2 of my favorite characters, at least that I saw with their character design. Evil Eye showing off her power. I really like the way that she looks. She looks really cool. And seeing that battle between her and Itoma it was awesome. The fact that Itoma was able to utilize bug parts as weapons, that was really impressive and very original. I thought that was cool how that whole battle was going out. And also being able to see Demiurge show what exactly he could do, because he was always playing off as he was a really good character. He knew what he was talking about. He was the type of person that you should always pick, but we were wondering why would you be considered somebody of importance when we haven't seen what you can do? And so when you see that he's just playing around and yet he's doing these cool moves, I was really blown away with that. And then on top of it, the topping on the cake really is finding the 8 fingers, those guys that just so happen to take up time to introduce themselves, got 2 seconds of that afterwards before, Sebas was punching their face in, breaking them into pieces. I just thought that was very comical. It was really funny to see all that happen. So, everything playing up to the point. The fighting was really what was impressive about that part. Everything else in the center of it, I mean, I'm sure you guys would probably be more impressed by it, liking what they had to do and filling everything in. I was kind of already tired with the lizard people thing. The brothel thing kind of got me back up and running, but then it's kind of went slightly downward, and then the ending kind of got you more brought back up. So it's kind of like a roller coaster ride, if you would, where I was just in the moment, but then kind of drifting off, and then, oh, there we go. And we got back into a nice, cool fighting setting, because it's just, I understand the whole Momon thing is just trying to make himself getting famous by doing all these missions and stuff. It's just, I don't know. I just, knowing how powerful Ainz Al Ghun is, and he's just destroying everybody as if he's like God himself, but he's going through all these additional steps to get himself known as this alter ego thing. It's just, I don't know. It's weird to me when you have all that power and you're just kind of keeping things clear. I understand their strategy behind it. It's just weird to me. But other than that, it was actually pretty cool. I actually thought it was a pretty good season. There was really nothing too bad about it. It actually kept me engaged.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Like, the high point is definitely Sebas and Suare, and this isn't like bad. By the way, the name of the maid group in Overlord is the Pleiades. I knew it was like a name after the constellation, but that is the group of maids, is what they're known as, the Pleiades. Anyways, yeah, it's fun. But kind of like, this happens a lot in Overlord. It turns out that a lot of the bigger conflicts are like, it's because of Nazariq in some way, shape, or form. So you kind of know that at least the people in Nazariq are safe. So that's why we spend so much time with side characters, because like those characters, Nazariq doesn't care about them. A lot of the times it's like Nazariq versus Nazariq in a covert way, obviously, because we have Momon versus Demiurge, which is, Ainz versus Demiurge, and they obviously know that they're doing this everything. But Evil Eye could have died in that fight with the Pleiades, and they don't care. She's just collateral. She died, fine. If she lived, that's fine. They don't really care. I think the major part of her being there was that Momon had credibility, so they might have been throwing their punches, if I remember correctly. So, Evil Eye could gush about Momon when she got back and wasn't coming from like Nabe, who would probably be incapable of doing it anyways. But yeah, so a lot of civilians, they don't care. So that's why the show kind of tries to get you involved with the side characters, because as you said, no one's safe. People do die. So it's like, are they going to die? What's going to happen? It keeps you guessing that way, right? Edwin, what about you?
The stuff with Renee and the brother and like all that the kingdom had taken over the throne, it was like all that is like political jargon that I cannot understand. So out of the entire anime, it's like that's the part that I tune out on. I was like, I can listen to this, but I'm not going to understand a single thing they're talking about, or at least half of it. Whereas like, well, I mean, I can't piece this together, so whatever. But it's just like Renee is an interesting character. Interesting is like the best word I could think of, because she's weird and crazy. I was like, I did wonder what her deal was, but it's like it was like, as Jordan said, the fight with the bug maiden was also really cool. I did not know that she was a bug. I was confused as to why when she talks, her mouth doesn't move. It was like, oh, so that's why it's disturbing, but also cool. And I'd say what annoys me with some of these big fights, so it's like this fight is like a lot of stakes, but it's just like only for like the human side, because it's always Nazariq against Nazariq. And it's like, well, they're fighting themselves. No one's really gonna die. There's not really any stakes for them, because it's just a fake battle. So it's like the three battles that were going on, it's just like, well, there's only one actual battle happening. The other two is just like sitting around while Momon and Demiurge talk. So it's just like, well, it's like there's a little bit boring. But it's like I'm glad that you did explain what the whole assault was, because like I was lost on it a little bit, but it does make sense. Sebas killing like all those high-ranking adventurers, like protecting the eight fingers, like, oh, this is gonna be a cool fight. It's like, oh, he just one punch manned it. It's like, okay, well, I was like, well, that was easier than I expected. And because they all had like very flashy introductions. So it's just like, well, that was pointless. But
it's even funnier in the light novel, because we get even more like, basically in the light novel, we get the POV of each one of those characters as they die, essentially. And we're getting more backstory from each one of them. It's like, I'm this from this, and I've done this, I've done all this, and oh, he's dead. And we repeat that like 6 or 7 times. It's really funny.
when it comes to like the Blue Rose adventures, it was like I am curious about. I don't really care that much for Evil Eye, but I am curious about the Blue Rose leader because she has like a legendary sword that reminds me of the blue like great sword from Dark Souls. So that's like I think there was a point where they explained explained. I'm assuming it's a lie that she pretends that there's a super dark power within the sword that she has to hold back, and then she's in her room alone pretending to be doing that because it makes her feel powerful, even though it is an actual powerful sword. So
From what I understand, because they tease that again and again as the series goes forward, I forget the leader's name again. I didn't mention anyone but Evil Eye because Evil Eye is really the only one that matters in this season. But they do mention it several times in the light novel with her struggling with that sword. And I think it's real, at least how they make it seem in the light novel. It's real, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. In the anime, they kind of make it. They're kind of like passing it off as like more of a joke, seemingly. But from what
well, I mean, it sounded like a joke because when she was like holding that back the power, it's the way she was doing it sounded euphoric, and it's just like okay, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is weird, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But yeah, I actually wanted to comment on this, but what you said, yeah, Entoma's really cool. It makes me want to have like a Bugmancer like class in an RPG or something because I always love seeing how far you can take like a one skill set. You know, it's kind of how do I explain this? It's kind of like when you see Shikamaru do a bunch of stuff with shadows in Naruto or Gaara or something like that. If you give a character like, or I mean, even with like earthbending or something in Avatar, right? I want to see how far people can take like single description power essentially and see how far you can take that. Right? It's or like Magneto from Marvel, right? It's like it's just magnetism, but it's like think of all the things you could do with magnetism. Think of all the different bugs you can use. You know, that's kind of I like seeing things like that being really expounded on.
I mean that's why Sun Eater from My Hero Academia is really cool. He just has simple abilities from each animal, but he uses them strategically in really awesome ways.
Here's the thing about Sun Eater, all right? I'm not going to spoil anything that happens in My Hero. I don't understand how you eat like 50 animals and somehow that equals giant Mega Man laser. I don't get it. I really don't. I just thought that was kind of funny. You're not at the finale yet, but basically that's like his Buster Cannon move. I don't understand how that works. It's really weird. But we're not here to talk about My Hero. Maybe someday, but not today.
What, and the Insect Eater can't do that? I would assume they're like for the Insect Eater because the insects that she used were like basic insects, but aren't there like magical ones in that world that she can use or something like that?
Probably, but they probably stuck with basic ones. So like the audience kind of understood how they were using, like they understood what the bug was and why she was using it the way it was, because she uses stuff like a shield bug. We don't have a shield bug, but it's just like a big ass beetle. But anyways, Corey, what are your thoughts?
The closing section of this was more or less the political growth of Nazarick with their plans. So they kind of do that whole interweaving of like, how do we kind of slowly creep into all of these things? So it's like the center part was truly more like a conflict, where this next part is just a show, but the action sequences are still animated very well. So it was kind of fun to watch. The political side of it is interesting, but sometimes I can get a little bit lost in some of the jargon if you miss one thing or you forget people's names. So a lot of the times I get so caught up on names just because some of them are complicated and I can't ever really remember. So I'll just start calling people by like Big Bug Guy or something like that. But I like where the direction is going because I'm excited to watch season 3. I have not watched season 3 yet, so I'll be diving into that here shortly. But I do want to, like, everything that they're presenting is doing a good job of keeping me interested in seeing where it's going. And though the humans are fighting a fake battle, it's another one of those things of like power scaling, right? Where they fight these battles and they think that they've pushed back an enemy, but because it's all part of this like grand scheme of things, you truly see the manipulation of like Nazarick's influence over everything else, where these kind of false sense of hope can be bestowed upon like these people that are running around doing stuff where it's like it's only happening because we're allowing it, and that just tested the good writing and things like that, the character development. So it's nice. And even though they did like this made group of people, it wasn't like a campy made group of people. It was still done well. It wasn't just like, here comes some Power Ranger-esque team dance Ginyu Force thing here. It was still just this artificial combat group of maidens or whatever. And it's like, but they still handle it in a that matches the tone of the show. So all of the stuff there was well put together.
Yeah, I do like this finale. We have better ones, even if they're going to redo this whole like Nazarick versus Nazarick shtick with some plans in the future. But I think they make it more interesting when we get to the Sacred or the Sacred Kingdom movie. We'll get there eventually because that's my favorite arc in the books. But it's also similar. It's a Nazarick versus Nazarick situation. But for whatever reason, he does a better job of kind of making you really care about what's going to happen to everyone else involved in everything. I won't spoil anything, but it is a little bit unsatisfying in that way, but yet somehow satisfying. It's a very weird balance when your antagonistic force is the most overpowered thing in the world. So you have to like balance how you're going to make this story interesting if nothing can really stand in their way but them, sort of thing. Anyways, one thing I wanted to touch on before we're going to close out of here, because I think the biggest thing that doesn't have to do with Nazarick in this. One thing though, anyone who's wondering, Suari is safe. Suari got back to Nazarick. She's part of the maids, and as of right now in the light novels, she is still safe. So Suari is nice and safe. We don't have to worry about the goodest girl Suari. So the only other thing that took place that I think was the biggest part of the arc that didn't have to do with Nazarick was Brain confronting Shaltir. Now, I'm always a fan of you scratch God or you can make God bleed or whatever with something like that. The little guy fighting the big demon or whatever. But the more interesting thing is why didn't Shaltir go after him? She's killed for less. There's literally no reason she shouldn't have just killed them all there. So I know why she didn't go after them, but I want to ask all of you guys what your theories are. Why did Shaltir not pursue Brain and just kill him, Climb, and their random ninja guy that they're running around with? Why do you think that happened?
I mean, out of the three characters, the only one that is of actual importance, because the other guys didn't seem all that important, but it's just Brain, she almost killed before anyway, so the only conclusion, it was Climb.
Interesting. Do you have any ideas why it might be Climb, or you just think it has something to do with him, and that's as far as you're going to go with it?
He's the closest one to royalty, I guess. He's just a royal guard. And I guess Rhaenyra specifically is the only touching detail that was give him any sort of importance.
Okay. All right. We'll get there eventually. All right. Good theory. Corey, you want to try?
Well, one, I like her outfit for this part of the story too. I thought it was kind of interesting because she's hiding in plain sight, basically, even though he recognized her right away. But I would imagine that she's not doing her own thing because last time this kind of happened, it didn't go so well. And I don't think she was even supposed to be there, which is why she was in disguise anyway. So it's kind of like an active rebellion without getting called out for it. So she doesn't get her ass kicked.
I agree with the first half of your theory, but no, she was ordered to be there. They did, but they also ordered her to be in disguise.
Okay.
As it was, just in case, so no one, recognizes her as the vampire Momon defeated, right? Just in case, she is supposed to be there. She isn't just acting out.
Yeah, if her presence was kind of discovered of who it actually was, then it kind of throws off the plan of oh, actually she didn't get defeated. So
yeah, exactly. Have any thoughts, Jordan, or you just didn't want to think about it that hard?
I didn't really think about it too hard. I was kind of just thinking about maybe it was just that she got a second chance. So maybe she's giving this person a second chance. I'm not really quite sure because she did get her ass handed and then got resurrected, or she's got the ability to finally think about what it was going on. She might have had that there was some sort of strategy behind it. So therefore she didn't want to just act upon herself like she did last time, which got her into trouble, like what Corey said. Thinking about it strategically, she might have something in her back pocket, probably saying, okay, this is not just out of kindness, but if I let this person go, maybe this might get me something additional to what I might need. And this might be helpful to Eisen. So it's or Ainz. So I'm this might be something I might want to do. That's basically all I could think of.
I like that everyone has a different idea. I will say one of you is much closer than the others, but I'm not going to spoil it because we'll get there eventually. And I know the reveal, quote unquote, is in the anime, probably in the latest season. But anyways, yeah. So I like this last arc. I'm obviously caught up on everything Overlord. So this is once we get to season 4 is actually when I haven't watched the anime. I have only read all the light novels. So it'll be interesting when we get there. We're going to continue with Overlord season 3 for the next episode of Anime Book Club. But for now, we're going to use these last few minutes we have. I just wanted to address where we've been because we kind of went dark since, what was it, October of last year. So essentially, all of us, Corey especially, kind of got caught up with a bunch of, real life stuff. We all have full-time jobs on top of everything. So this is just something fun we do on the side. We just got busy and we couldn't give the podcast any time. But I might have mentioned this at the end or in the Space Marine one that we recently put out, because we've actually been sitting on that audio for quite a while, is that going forward, we're going to have 3 main shows. We're going to have the start to credits where everyone plays a game and we talk about it. We have Anime Book Club. Everyone watches a season of anime. We talk about it. And then we're going to have a memory card. We're basically just going to have little history lessons on retro gaming and stuff like that. Also, for those of you who have listened and listened to the Space Marine episode, you'll notice the audio quality got way better in Space Marine. We are investing in a little bit of editing now, so that's good. But going forward, yes, those are the 3 main shows. We don't have a set schedule yet. We're gonna try and get everything, regularly pumping out here and there. Start to credits might be a bit longer in between, depending on what we're doing, because we do kind of want to do longer games that aren't necessarily in a month. Because I feel like us being rushed within the time frame of a month kind of affected how we thought of a game. So we'll be playing that by year. But yeah, that's where we've been and that's where we're going. So anyone else have anything to say, either about Overlord, about what we've been doing, or anything about the podcast before I take us out for the night?
I guess Overlord for me so far, I'm enjoying it. It's really good. Like I said, it kind of checks all the boxes I look for in anime. And then when it comes to like future things for the channel, you probably find some interesting game dev stuff that's going to kind of come up on its own little playlist here. I have a devlog. I'll be revisiting that project. I do have my first solo dev game up on Steam right now. I'll put a link of that in the description, which is kind of nice. And Jordan has also been kind of learning Unity and kind of diving into his own little game dev journey as well, so that we kind of get a even better understanding of like the mechanics of things of games when we talk about them too. So it's kind of fun. Been really busy with that.
Yeah, it's really cool. Check out Corey's game. And the other thing, those are our 3 main shows. And if something happens, like let's say Pokemon Presents, Nintendo Direct, a PlayStation, whatever the heck they call theirs, happens and we care about it, we'll comment on it possibly. Me and Corey have been trying to sit down and talk about Silent Hill F, because we played through that entire game when I was visiting him recently. We just wanted to have a chat about that game. Little small stuff that we just want to do. We might pop up, here and there, just randomly out of the blue. But we're mainly focused on the 3 main, shows we're going to do here on the podcast, right? So don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube if you really enjoyed today's episode. And as always, thanks for joining us. And remember to keep exploring, keep playing, and keep listening. This is the Mediocre Rumble Brothers podcast signing off. And thank you for listening.
Yay.
We're back.
A dinosaur story.
Take care.
Hey, this is Corey, and thanks for checking out Mediocre Rumble Brothers. If you liked the video, please drop a like, and if you didn't, that's fine too. If you'd like us to talk about any specific games, drop a comment below, or feel free to discuss your experience with the games that we mentioned in the episode. You can also listen to our episodes prior to YouTube on our Spotify. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again soon.